You hear about it all the time. Inflation, recessions, economic growth. These are the huge forces that really do shape our lives. But what's actually driving them? Well, today we're going to pop the hood and demystify the engine of the entire economy. It's the big mystery, right? One minute, it feels like everything is booming. Jobs are everywhere. The economy is just on fire. And the next, it feels like everything's grinding to a halt. Businesses are struggling and we're staring down a downturn. How can things swing so dramatically? And, more importantly, how can we possibly make sense of it all? Well, to navigate this incredibly complex landscape, economists have a secret weapon. It's like a map, a single dashboard for the entire economy. It's called the aggregate supply and aggregate demand model, and it's the key to seeing how all the different pieces fit together. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the first half of our map, the spending side. This is all about the total collective demand for everything produced in an economy. Think about it. From your morning coffee to a company building a brand new factory, it all adds up. And that grand total has a name, aggregate demand, or AD for short. It's basically the sum of all the spending in the economy. It captures how much stuff everyone, and I mean everyone, you, me, corporations, the government, is ready to buy at any given price level. So it seems intuitive that when prices go up, overall spending goes down. But why exactly? Well, there are three big reasons. First, the wealth effect. When prices rise, that $100 in your savings account doesn't buy as much as it used to, right? So you feel a little poorer and you spend less. Second, the export effect. If our prices go up, our goods become more expensive for people in other countries, so our exports fall. And third, there's the interest rate effect. When prices are higher, we all need more cash on hand to buy stuff. This increased demand for money can push up interest rates, making it more expensive for businesses to borrow and invest. These three things working together are why that 80 curve slopes downward. Okay, so what can actually shift that whole demand curve? Think of it like four big levers or engines that drive the economy. The biggest one by far is consumption. That's just all of us buying things every day. Then you've got investment, which is businesses spending on new equipment and buildings. Third is government spending, which is pretty self-explanatory. And finally, net exports, which is just what we sell to the world minus what we buy from it. If any one of these levers gets pulled, the entire demand for the economy can change. All right, that's the spending side of the coin. But it's only half the story. What about the production side? What determines the total amount of goods and services our economy can actually churn out? This is where we bring in aggregate supply. Now, this is a really important distinction. In the short run, things are a little flexible. If prices suddenly go up, a company might be able to squeeze out a little more product because their costs, especially wages, are kind of sticky. They don't adjust right away. But that can't last forever. In the long run, the supply curve is a perfectly vertical line. Why? Because it represents the economy's absolute potential, its maximum sustainable speed limit. That speed limit is set by real things, like our technology, our resources, and our labor force. And you can't just magically create more of those overnight. So what kind of things can mess with our ability to produce in the short term? Well, quite a few, actually. A sudden spike in the price of oil, a key input, makes it more expensive to produce almost everything. On the flip side, a big breakthrough in productivity, a new technology, say, lets us make more with less. Government policies like taxes and regulations can also change the cost of doing business. And even just what we think is going to happen with inflation can influence how much companies decide to produce today. Okay, so we've got our two key pieces, what everyone wants to buy and what our economy is capable of producing. Now for the million-dollar question. Where do these two forces meet? Let's bring them together and find out. This right here, this is the economic sweet spot. It's called long-run equilibrium. When all three of our lines, aggregate demand, short-run supply, and long-run supply, all intersect at the same point, it means the economy is humming along perfectly. We're producing exactly what people want to buy, and we're doing it at our full sustainable potential. The result? Stable prices and full employment. It's the goal. But let's be real, the economy doesn't just hang out in that sweet spot forever. Things go wrong. Shocks happen. So let's use our brand new map to diagnose one of the most common economic problems out there, inflation. And it turns out inflation comes in two main flavors. First up, we have demand pull inflation. This is the classic story of too much money chasing too few goods. Imagine something causes a huge surge in spending. Maybe consumer confidence goes through the roof, or the government starts a massive spending program. Aggregate demand shifts way out to the right. And for a little while, the economy actually goes into overdrive, producing beyond its sustainable speed limit.
But that can't last. You can't run the engine in the red forever. Soon, businesses start desperately competing for workers and materials, which drives up their costs, especially wages. This makes it more expensive to produce things, which shifts our short-run supply curve back to the left. In the end, the economy settles back down to its long-run potential, but the party's over, and we're left with a nasty hangover, a permanently higher level of prices.
Now, the second type of inflation is a whole lot uglier. It's called cost-push inflation, and it's caused by a negative supply shock. Think about something like a war that disrupts global oil supplies, or a pandemic that shuts down supply chains. All of a sudden, it becomes way more expensive and difficult to produce everything. This yanks the short-run supply curve to the left, and it gives us the absolute worst of both worlds, rising prices and falling output. That painful combination has a name: stagflation.
And a situation like this creates a complete nightmare for the people in charge, like central bankers and governments. I mean, think about it. You've got rising unemployment and rising inflation happening at the same time. Any move you make to fix one of those problems is probably going to make the other one even worse. There are no easy choices here, only painful trade-offs. So let's look at the dilemma. On one hand, they could try option one, stimulate spending to fight the recession and get people back to work. The problem? That risks pouring gasoline on the inflationary fire. Or they could go with option two, focus entirely on fighting inflation, maybe by jacking up interest rates. But that risks slamming the brakes on the economy and pushing it into an even deeper recession. It is a genuine pick-your-poison scenario.
Okay, this all sounds good in theory, but does this map actually work when things get crazy in the real world? Well, there is no better stress test than the absolute economic whirlwind that started in 2020. Let's apply our new toolkit. You can really break this story down into 3 acts. First, the pandemic hits, and it delivered a massive shock to both what we wanted to buy and what we could produce. Then came Act 2, a huge government response to boost spending back up. But that was followed by a third act, a lingering, painful hangover of global supply chain problems that just wouldn't go away. So in early 2020, people stopped spending money. They were locked down. They were uncertain. That's a huge leftward shift in aggregate demand. But at the exact same time, businesses couldn't produce things because of shutdowns and safety concerns. That's a huge leftward shift in aggregate supply. It was a simultaneous double whammy shock to both sides of the economy, something most economists had only ever read about in textbooks. It was totally unprecedented. Now, this is where our model really shines. In response to the shock, massive government stimulus shifted aggregate demand, roaring back to the right, and then some. People had money, and they were ready to spend. But, and this is the crucial part, aggregate supply couldn't keep up. It was still stuck, tangled up in global shipping nightmares and factory disruptions. This created a gigantic gap between what we desperately wanted to buy and what our economy could physically produce. And that imbalance, supercharged demand crashing into a crippled supply, is the textbook explanation for the wild and persistent inflation that we all experienced. And that's really the point of all this. This model isn't just some abstract theory for a classroom. It is a powerful, practical map. It's a tool that helps us make sense of the biggest economic storms and understand the forces that are shaping our world. Which leaves us with one final big question to chew on. As we look ahead with all the changes coming, from climate change to new technologies to shifting global politics, what's going to be the main source of turbulence? Will it be shocks to our ability to produce things, shocks to supply? Or will it be shocks to our desire to buy things, shocks to demand? Because understanding the difference is the first, most critical step to navigating whatever comes next.